try to force the music into some predetermined pattern. You flow with it, play with it, dance with it. Most people approach life like they're playing classical music with a very strict conductor. Every note must be exactly as written. There's no room for spontaneity, no space for creativity. But life is much more like jazz. The basic rhythm is there, but within that rhythm, infinite possibilities exist for improvisation and play. Here's one of the most liberating rules of the game. You don't have to be consistent. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. The character you've been playing, with all its limitations and problems, is not a permanent fixture. It's more like clothing you can change. We spend so much energy defending our self-image, protecting our reputation, maintaining our personality. But what if you could be anyone you choose to be in each moment? What if instead of being trapped by your past, you could reinvent yourself constantly, not in a crazy, unstable way, but in a fluid, creative way that allows you to respond freshly to each situation? Children do this naturally. One moment they're a princess, the next they're a dragon, then they're a race car driver. They don't worry about consistency. They don't think, but wait, yesterday I was a princess, so I can't be a dragon today. And here's the beautiful thing. Every person you meet is you, wearing a different mask, playing a different role. That annoying colleague, that difficult relative, that stranger on the street who smiled at you, they're all you, exploring what it's like to be different characters in the great drama. When you see this, compassion arises naturally. Not the condescending kind of compassion that looks down on others, but the recognition that you're all in this together, all playing parts in the same cosmic theater. This doesn't mean everyone is the same on the surface level. Obviously, people have different personalities, different backgrounds, different ways of playing their roles. But at the deepest level, the awareness looking out through their eyes is the same awareness looking out through yours. We're all windows in the same house, each with a different view, but all part of the same structure. Now, let's talk about one of the trickiest aspects of the game, the part most people find hardest to master. How do you deal with suffering? How do you play skillfully when the game seems to turn against you? When you're dealt what appears to be a losing hand? The first thing to understand is that suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is natural, inevitable. If you stub your toe, it hurts. If someone you love dies, you grieve. These are simply part of the human experience, part of what makes the game interesting and complete. But suffering, that's different. Suffering is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It's the resistance to what's happening, the demand that life be different than it is. Pain says, this hurts. Suffering says, this shouldn't be happening. It's unfair. It means something terrible about me or my future. When you understand this distinction, you can learn to experience pain without adding the extra layer of suffering. You can feel sadness without the story that you should be happy. You can face challenges without the narrative that you're a victim. You can encounter setbacks without the drama that your life is ruined. Think of it like weather. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it shines. The sky doesn't resist the rain or cling to the sunshine. It simply allows whatever weather is happening to happen. You can approach your inner weather the same way. Sometimes you'll feel joyful, sometimes sad, sometimes confused, sometimes clear. None of these states are permanent. They're all just part of the changing weather of consciousness. Here's another game rule that can save you enormous amounts of energy. You don't have to have an opinion about everything. You don't have to judge every experience as good or bad, right or wrong. Sometimes you can simply say, how interesting, and leave it at that. We've been trained to constantly evaluate, to always be deciding whether we like or dislike what's happening. But this constant judging is exhausting. It's like being a critic who can't simply enjoy a movie because they're too busy analyzing every scene. Sometimes you can just watch, just experience, just be present, without needing to have a position about it all. The master player learns to hold their opinions lightly. They might have preferences, but they don't cling to them. They can enjoy their favorite food without being upset when it's not available. The moment you think you have it all figured out, life will throw you a curveball. The moment you get comfortable with your role, circumstances will invite you to play a different part. Instead of resisting these surprises, you can learn to welcome them. They keep the game interesting. Imagine playing chess with someone who always made the same moves, or watching a movie where you knew exactly what would happen next. How boring would that be? The surprises, the plot twists, the unexpected turns, these are what make life an adventure rather than a tedious routine. When you stop needing to control every detail, when you develop what we might call a taste for surprise, you begin to find life endlessly fascinating rather than constantly frustrating. Now, one of the most liberating discoveries you can make about this game is that there are no real mistakes, only experiences. What you call failures are just experiments that didn't work out as expected. What you call successes are experiments that exceeded your expectations. But they're all just data points in the grand experiment of being human. A child learning to walk doesn't call it failure when they fall down. We think we should be able to do everything perfectly on the first try. We think mistakes are signs of inadequacy rather than natural parts of the learning process. We turn every stumble into evidence that we're somehow deficient. What if you could approach your whole life with the same attitude that child has toward learning to walk? What if every mistake was just information?